November 1944. The Hürtgen Forest is not a battlefield in the traditional sense. It is a damp, suffocating maze of pine and oak, a place where sunlight rarely reaches the forest floor and where rain does not fall so much as linger. Water collects in shell craters and never fully drains. Mud swallows boots. Fog drapes itself between tree trunks like a living curtain. For weeks, American and German forces have been locked in a grinding struggle inside these woods, and neither side has found glory here, only exhaustion. To General Erich Brandenberger, however, the forest represents something else. It represents geometry, protection, constraint. He stands in his forward command bunker, coat collar turned up against the cold, listening to rain drum steadily on timber planks overhead. Maps are pinned to the wall before him, their clean lines mocking the chaos outside. On those maps, the trees are green shading. On the ground, they are towers of wood 3 feet thick, rooted deep and ancient. He studies the terrain with the eye of a veteran. Brandenberger is not a romantic commander intoxicated by slogans. He is 62 years old, shaped by the First World War, refined by campaigns in France, hardened by the vast brutality of the Eastern Front. He understands mechanized warfare. He has seen what American artillery can do in open country. He has watched Allied fighter bombers turn highways into graveyards. He knows that in clear weather, any German movement by day is an invitation to annihilation from above. But today, the sky is sealed. Cloud cover hangs low and heavy. Rain smears visibility. The airfields behind American lines are likely mud. Their fighter bombers, the constant hunters that stalk German columns, are grounded. For once, air superiority means nothing. Brandenberger senses opportunity. He has one elite reserve remaining in this sector, a battalion of Fallschirmjäger, paratroopers, veterans of brutal fighting in Russia, men who have survived encirclements, winter offensives, and urban slaughter. They are disciplined, cohesive, proud. They have been held back precisely for a moment like this. The Americans have taken positions around the village of Vanish. They have dug in. They are exhausted from weeks of attritional fighting. Brandenberger believes the forest negates their greatest strengths. Tanks cannot maneuver easily here. Artillery observation is limited. Air power is absent. The battle, he reasons, will return to fundamentals: infantry skill, small unit initiative, personal courage. He leans over the operations table and makes his calculation. The forest is armor. The canopy conceals movement. The tree trunks stop bullets. The mud dampens fragmentation. In close terrain, he believes, superior training will outweigh superior resources. He reaches for the field telephone. The order is simple and direct. The Fallschirmjäger will attack and retake Vanish. 600 of his best men begin to prepare. 2 miles away, in the dripping pines, the paratroopers assemble in silence. Camouflage smocks cling damply to their shoulders. Helmets are adjusted, weapons checked, faces set. These are not green recruits. Many carry scars from the Eastern Front. They know what artillery sounds like when it is searching for you. They know what it means to advance under fire. But today, the forest feels like a partner. They look at the trees and see solidity, protection. Each trunk is wide enough to conceal a man entirely. In Russia, in France, in countless engagements, trees have saved lives. A soldier pressed against wood feels shielded. The mind interprets thickness as safety. They begin to move. The advance is deliberate, careful, almost elegant. Units spread into assault formations between trunks. Communication is whispered, hand signals replacing shouted commands. Rain masks small sounds. The earth absorbs footfalls. To an outside observer, they might appear as shadows gliding through mist. Confidence builds. They believe they are exploiting weather and terrain. They believe the Americans, deprived of aircraft and visibility, are blind. They believe this battle will be decided at close range, where skill and aggression dominate. Across the contested ground, Sergeant James Miller of the 28th Infantry Division surveys a different equation. He is not looking upward toward the sky, where anti-aircraft gunners traditionally search for threats. Instead, his gaze is fixed on the tree line ahead. Beside him sits an M16 multiple-gun motor carriage. Officially, it's an anti-aircraft platform, 4 50-caliber Browning machine guns mounted on a rotating turret powered by an onboard generator. Its intended purpose is clear in the manuals: to track fast-moving aircraft, to fill the air with metal at high altitude. But manuals do not account for Hürtgen forests. Miller and his crew have adjusted the elevation downward. The quad mount now points horizontally, barrels aligned with the tree trunks. The machine hums faintly as its electrical system idles. Ammunition belts are fed carefully into place. Not standard rounds, but armor-piercing incendiary cartridges designed to penetrate light cover and ignite upon impact. The Americans have learned something in these woods. Trees stop bullets, but only up to a point. When 50-caliber rounds strike pine or oak at high velocity, the outcome is not gentle penetration, it is violent fragmentation. Wood becomes shrapnel, resin ignites, the forest ceases to be passive terrain and becomes active destruction. Miller runs a hand across the cool metal housing of the turret. He understands what this weapon can do. He has seen it used against tree lines before. He knows the sound it makes when all 4 guns fire simultaneously, a tearing roar that overwhelms conversation and thought. The generator sputters to life fully. The turret rotates smoothly at a touch. He waits. In the forest, the paratroopers continue forward. They can now glimpse American foxholes between trunks. Shapes move ahead, helmeted silhouettes, low earthworks. They are within striking distance. A signal flare rises from the German line. 0830 hours. The attack begins. Paratroopers surge forward, MP-40 submachine guns snapping sharp reports through rain-soaked air. For seconds, the assault appears textbook. American positions respond with rifle fire. Shouts echo between trees. German units leapfrogged from trunk to trunk, using each as momentary cover before advancing again. To Brandenberger, listening to early radio reports, it seems confirmation. The forest is leveling the field. Then Sergeant Miller depresses the trigger. The first burst is less a sound than a physical force. 4 heavy machine guns discharge at once, their combined rate of fire approaching 2,400 rounds per minute. The effect is not individual gunshots, but a continuous ripping roar. The front rank of advancing Germans is struck instantly, not by single bullets, but by streams. Multiple impacts land almost simultaneously across torsos and limbs. Bodies jerk backward violently. Momentum stops as if an invisible wall has materialized. Behind them, soldiers react instinctively. They dive for trees. They press their backs against thick trunks, confident in the universal rule of infantry survival. Wood stops bullets. But Miller does not adjust his aim to seek exposed bodies. He sweeps the turret through the forest itself. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds slam into timber at high speed. The impact is explosive. Pine resin flashes into flame. Dense oak splinters outward in jagged shards. Trees erupt, not collapsing, but detonating in localized bursts. What the Germans trusted becomes lethal. Fragments of wood, accelerated by ballistic force, scythe outward. Long splinters tear through fabric and flesh. Men crouched tightly behind trunks are struck by secondary projectiles they never anticipated. The forest is no longer shelter, it is a multiplier of destruction. From his bunker, Brandenberger receives fragmented radio transmissions. "Trees exploding, cannot hold." The words are broken, half swallowed by static and panic. He frowns, attempting to interpret reports that defy expectation. Trees exploding is not standard combat vocabulary. Artillery can fell timber, mortars can shatter branches, but this is something else: sustained, direct, overwhelming fire. He listens as voices shift from controlled updates to raw alarm. Pinned, heavy automatic fire, casualties mounting. Brandenberger straightens. The weather has grounded aircraft. The forest should negate tanks. What remains? He does not yet understand that what confronts his paratroopers is not a tactical anomaly, but a system designed to solve terrain by erasing its advantages. In the valley ahead, the M16 continues its relentless sweep. Gun barrels begin to glow faintly from sustained discharge. A crewman pours water over them, steam rising sharply in cold air. The generator hums steadily, indifferent to mud and rain. German units attempt to maneuver around the cone of fire. They crawl. They attempt flanking movements through denser patches of timber. The fire follows. Electric traverse allows instantaneous redirection. The weapon does not hesitate or fatigue. It does not seek cover. It simply saturates space. After 20 minutes, the valley falls eerily silent. The assault's momentum has dissolved. Where 600 elite paratroopers advanced with confidence, the ground is now scattered with bodies amid shattered trunks and burning resin. In his bunker, Brandenberger absorbs the reports. His first calculation has failed. But he has reserves remaining, and he believes still that what happened cannot be sustained. He reaches for the telephone once more. General Brandenberger does not allow himself the luxury of shock for long. Shock is for younger officers, for men still capable of surprise. He has lived through Verdun. He has watched entire regiments erased by artillery that did not pause to admire bravery. War, he knows, is not fair, but it is usually comprehensible. What he has just heard over the radio is not. He replays the reports in his mind: exploding trees, sustained automatic fire, units unable to maneuver, communications collapsing under volume of casualties. It suggests not a localized defensive position, but an integrated response, something prepared, something anticipated. He asks the operations officer a simple question: are American aircraft in the air? The answer comes quickly: no, Herr General, weather still grounding flights. So air power is not the cause. Artillery, possible. But artillery falls in arcs. It pauses, it shifts. It cannot sweep laterally through timber with mechanical precision. This is direct fire. Brandenberger's jaw tightens. He understands what that implies. The Americans have brought anti-aircraft assets forward into forest terrain. Weapons designed to track fast-moving aircraft are being repurposed horizontally. Electrically powered turrets, sustained high-volume fire. They are not reacting emotionally, they are solving. Still, he refuses to concede the ground. War is rarely decided in a single exchange. He has lost the first wave. It is brutal, yes, but elite units are meant to absorb punishment and adapt. Perhaps the Americans expended ammunition recklessly. Perhaps the fire cannot be sustained at that intensity. He has 300 additional men within immediate reach, younger soldiers, some less experienced, but disciplined enough to execute a coordinated push. He makes his decision. You will reinforce, immediate assault, overwhelm their position. The order travels down the chain of command. In the forest, the second wave moves forward over terrain now transformed. The air smells of sap and cordite. Smoke threads through branches. Bodies lie twisted in mud, some partially obscured by shattered wood. The sight unsettles even hardened veterans. But orders are orders. Momentum must be restored. They advance more cautiously now. Gone is the earlier confidence. Movements are tighter. Eyes scan not just for enemy infantry, but for the source of the mechanical roar they have heard described. At the American line, Sergeant Miller checks ammunition levels. Belts are replaced efficiently. The crew works in practiced coordination. There is no shouting, no theatrical urgency, just repetition. The M16 was never meant to be subtle. It was meant to dominate airspace. Here, it dominates something else: volume. When the second German assault pushes into engagement range, the Americans do not wait for full exposure. Spotters identify movement patterns between trunks. Coordinates are called. The quad mount pivots. The guns open again. The effect is immediate and familiar. This time, the Germans attempt to hug the ground rather than trees. They flatten into mud, pressing into shallow depressions. Some attempt bounding maneuvers, sprinting short distances between bursts. But the weapon does not fire in discrete bursts. It sustains. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds tear low across the forest floor. Mud kicks upward in violent sprays. Roots splinter. Fallen logs disintegrate under concentrated streams of fire. Where the first wave encountered shock, the second wave encounters inevitability. The difference matters. Shock can be overcome by discipline. Inevitability erodes it. Within minutes, formations dissolve into isolated survival attempts. Small groups try to withdraw. Others attempt desperate charges forward, hoping proximity will negate the range advantage. They do not reach the American line. At headquarters, radio traffic becomes sparse, not because resistance has stabilized, but because operators are gone. Brandenberger listens in mounting silence. He does not shout. He does not rage. He absorbs. 2 assault waves, nearly 900 men committed. Casualty reports incomplete, but catastrophic. His adjutant finally speaks, quietly. Herr General, we must consider disengagement. Disengagement. The word lingers. Withdrawal without authorization is not a trivial decision. German command culture emphasizes obedience and resolve. Higher headquarters expects persistence. Berlin believes in willpower as a strategic asset. The narrative of superiority cannot fracture at the divisional level. But numbers do not respond to narratives. Brandenberger closes his eyes briefly. If firepower dominates daylight, then daylight must be removed from the equation. He has perhaps 200 effectives remaining, scattered, shaken but alive. Night operations have long been a German strength. In darkness, mechanical superiority diminishes, visibility collapses, initiative returns to small units. He outlines the plan. No preliminary bombardment, no signal flares, no automatic fire unless absolutely necessary. Helmets wrapped to reduce noise, grenades and knives for close engagement. Crawl within 200 yards before initiating contact. It is not a grand maneuver. It is an attempt to reintroduce unpredictability into a battle increasingly governed by machinery. As evening settles over the Hürtgen Forest, rain continues its steady descent. The shattered trees cast distorted silhouettes against deepening gloom. Smoke from earlier fires mixes with mist, thickening the air. The surviving Fallschirmjäger prepare in near silence. There is no bravado now, only focus. They move out after full dark. They begin to believe it may work. Then a new sound emerges from the American ridge, a mechanical hum. Generators. The Germans freeze instinctively. Behind U.S. lines, equipment originally designed for airfield illumination is being activated. Massive 60-inch searchlights tilt upward, not toward the forest floor, but into the cloud deck above. Beams strike low clouds and scatter downward in diffuse reflection. The effect is surreal. Artificial moonlight floods the battlefield. Not harsh spotlighting, but an even, ghostly glow that eliminates deep shadow. Every movement becomes visible, every silhouette distinct against pale ground. For a suspended heartbeat, both sides understand the transformation. Darkness has been industrialized. The advantage the Germans sought evaporates in seconds. A sergeant whispers, then shouts, "Forward!" There is no alternative now. They surge. The M16 gunners, already prepared, align their sights against illuminated forms emerging between shattered trunks. The quad mount fires. In artificial light, tracer rounds draw solid red lines through pale air. They appear almost continuous, stitching earth to sky. The Germans attempt to sprint, but mud grips their boots. Speed is impossible. Cover is minimal. The forest that once promised concealment has been thinned and broken by earlier fire. Within minutes, organized movement ceases. By dawn, the assault is over. What remains is not a tactical setback. It is an erasure. General Brandenberger walks the ground in gray morning light. He steps carefully through churned mud and splintered wood. Bodies lie where momentum ended them. Faces are pale, expressions fixed in effort or shock. He pauses beside one fallen officer and retrieves a folded letter from his pocket. It is addressed to a wife. The handwriting is steady, the message unfinished. Brandenberger reads only enough to understand its tone. Confidence, belief, assurance of victory. He folds it again and returns it to the coat. Around him, the forest stands altered, less dense, more skeletal. Trees that once symbolized protection now bear scars and hollowed cores. The terrain itself has testified to a shift. He turns toward his adjutant. "We miscalculated," he says quietly. Not because the men lacked courage, but because courage encountered a system designed to neutralize it. And in that equation, courage was insufficient. In the days that follow, reports move upward through the German chain of command. They are written in formal language, stripped of emotion, translated into the cold vocabulary of military assessment. High casualties, sustained automatic fire, illumination assets employed. Nowhere do they capture the sound of trees detonating or the sight of night turning into manufactured daylight. Paper cannot hold that. Berlin responds with predictable directives: hold positions, counterattack where possible, maintain pressure. The language of willpower remains intact. But on the ground, something fundamental has shifted. Brandenberger understands now that he did not lose to a clever maneuver or a superior infantry formation. He lost to integration. Anti-aircraft weapons repurposed for ground dominance, searchlights converted into artificial moons, generators, ammunition supply, transport, doctrine, all synchronized, each component replaceable, each man inside the system part of a larger mechanism. The Americans did not rely on individual brilliance in the forest. They relied on repeatable process. That realization is heavier than defeat. He dictates his final field assessment with deliberate clarity. Enemy demonstrates capacity to convert industrial assets into tactical solutions at will. Natural terrain no longer guarantees defensive advantage under sufficient volumetric fire and illumination. It is a technical sentence, but its meaning is enormous. The Hürtgen Forest had been chosen for its density, its mud, its miserable weather. It was supposed to negate tanks, aircraft, speed. It was supposed to reward endurance and fieldcraft. Instead, it became proof that environment itself could be engineered around. In private conversation weeks later, Brandenberger speaks more candidly to a fellow officer. "We were trained to master terrain," he says. "They redesign it." He survives the war, as many senior officers do, carrying with him not just memory, but comprehension. Germany did not fall solely because of lost battles. It fell because it could not sustain a system at the scale required to compete. Factories bombed, fuel scarce, replacement parts delayed, training shortened, every variable strained. Across the Atlantic, production lines continue uninterrupted. Steel flows, ammunition ships, replacement vehicles arrive. Searchlights can be requisitioned in bulk. Quad-mounted guns can be deployed wherever needed. When one unit is destroyed, another takes its place. Courage still exists on both sides. Skill still matters in moments. But over time, repetition favors the side that can manufacture solutions faster than the enemy can adapt. The Hürtgen Forest becomes one episode in a much larger pattern. Korea will demonstrate it again with artillery concentrations and air mobility. Vietnam will test it in jungle terrain against guerrilla warfare. The Gulf War will compress it into weeks of coordinated air and ground operations governed by satellite and sensor networks. Each conflict reinforces the same principle. Once war becomes industrial and systemic, the decisive factor is not isolated heroism. It is capacity. On a cold November morning in 1944, under artificial moonlight in a shattered forest, that principle became undeniable to one German general. He believed dense trees would protect his men. He believed weather would limit the enemy. He believed courage could offset material imbalance. Instead, he witnessed a battlefield where light could be manufactured, cover could be penetrated, and firepower could be sustained beyond human endurance. The forest was not defeated by bravery, it was solved. And in solving it, a new era of warfare revealed itself, one in which the outcome would increasingly be determined not by who believed more strongly, but who could build, supply, and adapt more completely. Brandenberger would carry that understanding to his grave in 1952. By then, the world had already begun reorganizing itself around the lesson he learned too late. In modern war, the side that builds the better system writes the ending. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.